Money, consumption, status, and power have long driven our culture's pulse. They've shaped our motivations, our behaviors, and our beliefs. But what happens when we give art the same influence? Writers, designers, musicians, photographers, videographers, and the world's most creative minds have the power to heal us, challenge us, and guide us back home to ourselves. In their hands and through their crafts, we find a new world, one where art is a catalyst for powerful change, where self-expression, human connection, and deep empathy are the world's richest assets. This is Art is the New Wall Street, with your host, Morgan Short.
Hi, artists and creatives. Welcome back to Art is the New Wall Street. Today, we're going to get a little bit weird. We're going to talk all about the intersection of AI and humanity and the role technology has to play in making art. And there's no one better to talk about this subject than my guest today, Dave Razor. Dave is a 2D and 3D animator, installation artist, and experiential designer with over a decade of experience in interactive storytelling and immersive design. He has expertise in augmented reality, virtual reality, projection mapping, generative AI, has mastered tools like Cinema 4D, Unreal, Unity, Creative Cloud Suite. He is a philosophy graduate, which I can't wait to get into a little bit here. He has a flair for existentialism and Buddhism and uses digital art to explore life's big questions. He currently brings his talents to a full-service advertising agency called Epic Creative as a full-time 2D and 3D animator. Dave, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hello. Yeah, you just summed up like a super nerd. Yeah, right on. Here we are.
If you had to explain what you do to an 80-year-old.
An 80-year-old?
Yes, what would you say?
I would say oftentimes what I do is magic, even to my parents or a lot of my peers, because some of the stuff is quite dazzling when you really are diving into technology and bringing that into art, especially when you're doing a lot more of the like an immersive or an experiential kind of thing. Sometimes I like to look at it kind of like we're breaking down these barriers of what build up in life, of being like a hardened viewer of the world, and it kind of just pulls that back. And all of a sudden when you do a proper say experiential piece or an immersive art piece, you peel that rough exterior away, and all of a sudden you have this glimmer of your childlike wonder that you once had. And I guess that it's just making people children again, you know. You can see.
Yes, I want more of that in my life, that childlike wonder. For those who might not be familiar, can you explain a little bit about how you define experiential art?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, per industry and group of people, there's always contentious, these terms kind of thing. But to me, experiential art, for example, I work a lot with a nonprofit that works with children's mental health, children that's been through trauma, and they do a lot of fundraising galas because it's nonprofit, so you have to like constantly hustle. So I work a lot with them, and we've done the thing where people walk up to a big wall. This is a 20-foot wall. We have a depth sensing camera mounted going to a computer, and a big monster appears on the wall that mirrors everything they do. So they became the monster. Like the theme of that year was Where the Wild Things Are. And so we took some of these monsters and had them animate, and it was a huge attention grabbing piece because it was on the side of a wall in this big old abandoned factory, and people were dancing and moving. And so it's kind of the idea, what I really adore about like an experiential thing or an immersive thing, is it kind of blurs all the lines between the artist, the art, and the viewer, and it just kind of pushes it all together. And in the past few years, that kind of scene has really taken off. With things like Meow Wolf or big festivals do it all the time now. And it's wonderful to see that technology is starting to catch up with creativity,
Yeah.
Which is a cool thing.
Now, do you do every part of that from concept to launch to what all is involved in that process?
Oh, it depends entirely on the project. Sometimes they have a client that comes up, or somebody I'm working with comes up and like, hey, we have this idea. We want somebody to come up to a wall and there's a galaxy of stars and stuff, and we want them to be able to move it by moving their hands, and stars swirl around and stuff like that. So they already have the concept up, and I'm like, okay, I think we can figure that out with like a particle system or something like that. Oftentimes it's from the ground up to where, I'll use whether it's like Notch FX, which is a software thing for interactive exhibits, or Touch Designer, which is very popular too. Build it in there. It's a node-based system, so I can really get in there and do it from the ground up. But when it starts to get really code-based, then I go to some colleagues. We have a little crew of people, because I have a limit of coding that when I see it, all of a sudden become just garbled, and I'm like, well, I'm useless now. But, so it's good to have a crew of people with like minds and like visions, but have different skill sets that can create things that can kind of wow people.
You said it's great to see technology catching up to creativity. You've been in this space doing really cool things with technology for a long time. And I think generative AI has only recently been a little bit more adopted and accessed by more of the population. So just talk to me a little bit more about technology catching up to creativity.
Yeah. Right now, I kind of look at technology with, especially generative AI, if you're open-minded to it, it's kind of a new world of creativity that we're entering. It's knocked out this idea that you have to be a master of your craft to be creative. And there's merit to that, to have a discipline and just really be good at a craft. But there's also amazing things popping up on Discord or Instagram or TikTok of kids with these powerful, limitless imaginations being able to make something very easily with generative AI. And I find that just so remarkable, because now we're starting to see combinations of creativity. I feel like when you're in an industry, myself, I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else, but when you're in an industry, in a craft, you start to fall into an echo chamber of how to do's, you know what I mean? And ways to do things and best practices. And every time you put up a best practice, you're eliminating a potential wild experiment. And I just feel like having a lot of wildly untamed creativity flooding in, it's a really cool time to be a creative if you're open-minded to these things. It is ferociously debated,
So much so. And you're a lot more optimistic than a lot of people that I've talked to about this. And I think there's even some notions of like, if you're using AI, it's almost like looked down upon in the art or in the craft space.
Yep.
Like if you entered this role for the love of craft, like why would you need AI? But what would you say to that? Like somebody who maybe looks down on people who use AI to be more creative.
The cynical person in me would be like, you're gatekeeping, you're threatened. So now you are just restricting access to your superior knowledge and experience. But I think the wider-minded person in me looks at it like, this is a new genre, a whole new realm of art and creativity that's building up. And it exists, and it is alive, and it has people that love it and when you dive into the AI generative world, it is as deeply crafted and complex as anybody doing anything in Photoshop or After Effects. It is a craft into itself, and if you automatically shut it down as being just plagiarism art, you're missing an entire genre. Like I would encourage anybody just to go and pick up Prompt Magazine. With stuff that's coming out of there, and that's in print, they kind of blur in the worlds, and there's just this lack of ego necessarily. It'll come, obviously humans are humans and we become very prideful. It's just kind of our nature. But this is genre, just like I liken it to, and it's very, very normal thing, to when you have film photography, digital comes up and all these people are like, well, you're not a photographer. You don't need to do anything in the darkroom. You lost the craft, but now it is the norm. And there are still film photographers out there and doing wonderful things and being massively creative, but they really focus on the craft, and there's room for everybody. And it kind of grates my soul a little bit when anybody's being like, nah, you're not real. You have no merit, or you're not warranted in our space.
Yeah, it's like you're not a real artist, or just like, and I feel like you hear that a lot, and people have their own opinions about using AI. If you use AI, is it still art? Are you still an artist?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I remember when processing came out, it's a code-based visual language, basically. And at first people are like, this is just noise on screen, you're just putting code in and you're getting images and stuff. But after it really started catching hold and people started like seeing what these code-based generative arts can do, not AI, just like, classic coding, then it opened up a whole field of things. And now if you go to any museum or any festival, it exists, it is it's loud. And just like generative AI, it's a little different because I think generative AI, this movement is much more impactful to the world as a whole than like code-based art or anything like that. Everything's in a hype cycle right now. Everybody's really excited and everybody's really scared. And it's already slowing down now. You can feel it. You can see it. There's not a brand new massive tidal wave of thing every week. Now we're just slowly like getting our heads and arms around it. But I think I deviated from whatever you had asked.
I had asked, no, that's fair, because this is such a massive topic. And it is, you're right. It is in the hype right now. Everyone's hopping on it. Everyone's talking about it. And so, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how they feel about it, what they think about it. And they're looking to, people who are in it, people like you in that world. So it's an important topic, and we can go so many different places in this. So I've been a lucid dreamer forever, and I am horrible at drawing and painting. Like I don't have the hands for it. And I've been using Bing Image Creator to bring my dreams to life. And it's like in doing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an accessible way for the vision to come to life in a more tangible way, because I can't draw. I draw little stick people when I try to dream journal, right? So that's just one tiny use case of like, in a lot of ways, AI has made art a little bit more accessible even. And then there's the whole question of, like AI has been trained on all of these different artists. Talk to me about that. Your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, the waters get muddy really quick.
Yeah.
And it comes down to ethics really, and machines don't have ethics. They're machines, and it will always fall on people. You can criticize them very easily, very quickly. If somebody's like, hey, I want Spider-Man in the style of Van Gogh, that's obvious, it's like, come on, it's cool to play because it's fun and exciting. But if you have any level of seriousness, you won't do that. You shouldn't do that. And, unless if there's a real concept behind it, but that's a tricky thing. And, especially when it comes down to intellectual property, you come to estates, you come to like who owns what. There's a strong argument being like, hey, I went to the Met not too long ago, got inspired, came back, started making stuff that looked like that just because you were inundated. I didn't use AI to deal an idea. I was inspired by something I saw. And, there's the argument that oftentimes that same thing with AI. If you use it responsibly, if you use it well, it is using it more as a inspiration jumping off point to create things that are up here that you can't get out. But if you're going to go and try to make a Pollock with Midjourney, don't do that. It's fun if you want to see that in certain situations, but if you're going to try marketing it or capitalizing off it, then that gets sketchy, I think.
It's been around for decades. It's the same thing as just being inspired in general. I mean, it's not the same thing, but what you're speaking to is like human beings get inspired by other human beings and other creations and other situations. And they take ideas and make their own spin on it.
Right. I think the real charm of generative AI in that way, if we're looking at it like that, is there is a software, fairly simple sound audio creation software that you could take and throw samples in a quadrant of 5 or 8 things, or even sounds, like you want a horn, a guitar, and a drum, and then you can kind of visually scroll between them. And now you're sculpting new sounds, merged of all of them that are brand new sounds that have never been heard because people physically could not create that sound. Maybe a really skilled sound designer or something. But now we're doing that with music, and you have these genres bending all over the place, brand new sounds and styles that 5 months ago couldn't almost be imagined, and now they're just flooding. Which it's exciting to see something brand new. Which brings it back to the story that I throw out a lot. Years ago, I was an animator, motion designer, and I remember putting on the new wave of VR, like virtual reality. I put on a headset, and I remember feeling like it's been 30 years since I've seen something for the first time. Like, really,
Yeah.
And I remember just being so amazed, and I spent hours in there being like, wow, this is the coolest thing. I mean, of course, I had a massive headache afterwards because early VR was tricky, but that's kind of how it is now. There's things coming out now where I'm like, wow, I haven't seen anything like this ever. And I think it's different now because VR is kind of niche, it's kind of like not everybody likes it, not everybody uses it. But this generative stuff is everywhere and everybody can use it, and it's cool to see stuff.
I have 2 questions, and the first one is I'm in ChatGPT, and I use it pretty much daily now with my team at work, but I feel like it's gotten worse since, like, is there any merit to that, or is that completely baseless?
No, there is merit. I mean, you hear these stories all the time that when ChatGPT first hit the big time, was like 2 years ago, a year ago, I was released. It was very good at a lot of things. Like, it could do math really well, and it could do a lot of these things really well, but it's constantly trained on the inputs of people using it. The thing was, when you hit the masses, the machine was much smarter than the people, but when the people started bringing it, it brought the ceiling down because there were so many dumb people doing so many dumb things that it actually got dumber, and people are like, well, this is backfired. I mean, it'll always be like that. Yeah, I agree though. 4.0 it has things that are weaker, and it's just
I've taken a couple prompting courses and been on like an AI Discord and whatnot, and I like learned like mega prompts, and I feel like the prompts that I've saved used to work so much better. So and it's just like out of observation. Like, I'm not an expert at all in AI, but I am a daily user. For those that are unfamiliar with AI, who I start to have the conversations with, they suddenly are like so scared. They worry about humanity. They're like, all of the creativity is going to be sucked out. What do you have to say to that person who is so scared that our creativity is like going out the window?
I think creativity is evolving, and it was inevitable. The loss of humanity is an interesting thing. I think a couple of things to that. One of my very favorite philosophers, and I'm sure I get this wrong for what he really meant, but Søren Kierkegaard, my second child's name is Søren. I'd say he's named after the godfather of existentialism. He had this thing that he would say, summed up really loosely: humans don't learn or evolve until they're faced with what's called an existential dread. And to me, I think it was really about 2016-ish, started really getting into AI. And then I started seeing what it can do And I'm like, whoa, this is going to freak people out,
Mhm.
And then fast forward a few years when it started getting really big. And I was just so thrilled to see how the reaction was going to be, because now we're starting to see things that we held as our human condition, maybe AKA our soul, our the spark of wit that makes us, differentiates us from the non-human animals, or differentiates us from the trees or the rocks. Uh, all of a sudden that's like thrown into real question. It's getting kicked to the curb, being like, so something made out of silicon and electricity can emulate exactly what I think makes me special, you know? That's a form of existential dread. Now all of a sudden, like, maybe we aren't as special as we thought. Maybe our humanity doesn't exist. What
Well,
if, yeah, I don't know. And it's very exciting to really go down to that place. Um, the backlash from the art community was very predictable, but it's also rather unfortunate until you really like see this other genre of a group of people rise into the occasion, which happens. Creativity itself is evolving. It's so weird because there's no definitive answer. Like, I don't even have one. I have theories. There's this guy, a philosopher of mind, like a mind philosopher, Daniel Dennett. And he was a staunch atheist. There is no afterlife. There is nothing. He went so far as to say that we don't even think. We are just, we think we think. We are a very, very long and complicated line of evolved patterns of survivalism. So what we think of as thinking isn't thinking at all. It is the same as blood flowing through your body. We just are. There's no thoughts. Thoughts are
mm,
not real.
mhm.
And when this AI really started popping up, it really got me thinking about that. I'm like, what if we just don't? What if humanity is an illusion entirely and we just don't think? And now all of a sudden we have real indications that what we thought is thinking or creating
Mm.
or making art is just a branch down on a branch down on a branch down of a network of learned behaviors and evolutionary survivalism. You know, I don't know. It's kind of nihilistic in some ways because then you're eliminating a lot of things. But at the same time, there's a real beauty in this. All of a sudden, maybe the pantheists are right. Maybe we are all God, and because God is all us, we're all just a big cosmic bowl of soup. And, you know, I don't know. I went places on that, but
I'm so glad you did. I think this is what happens for so many people. Like you said, suddenly, thing that makes humanity different in a lot of people's minds is being questioned. I mean, you're a philosophy major. How would you define humanity?
I mean, I was thinking about this when you said, "Hey, you want to talk about this?" And my head went down a hole pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um, maybe we should, instead of like saying what is humanity, maybe we should reassess what it shouldn't be. Maybe we
Ooh,
should
okay.
maybe we should embrace moving away from what we view humanity as. Look what we do to each other. We militarize murder. I mean, we make it profitable. We sell it. We harness this power of like torture. We industrialize the murdering of animals for profit, for greed. These are human trait. That's humanity. That's what we do. We abuse and we torture and we do the worst thing. The worst things that ever happened were because human. Buffalo didn't do this.
Mhm.
Monkeys do some weird things, to pee on each other and stuff, but they don't industrialize it. We
Yeah.
became this hoarding culture, and I'm not saying AI is a solution, but it is a spark, maybe of a genesis of the thought of being like, let's reassess what humanity is, and hopefully, if we don't destroy ourselves, I don't think AI will destroy humans. So I mean, we're doing a very good job of that ourselves. Um, I think it should hopefully show us that maybe our actions and ways we have been has been incorrect.
What becomes important now?
Yeah. exactly. Like, yeah, I mean,
Relationships with each other,
fully,
connection,
yeah.
love. I
Kind,
mean,
kindness, yeah. Um, yeah, it's really taken a strange way. I mean, just like any kind of superpower thing that we create, gunpowder, atomic energy, we abuse it. Same thing with AI. We have these deep fakes that are destroying people, because there are very bad actors doing very terrible things because they're human. Um, yeah, it's a tricky one. I have children, and sometimes I just like wake up at night just sweating, being like, oh my God, this is awful. But then sometimes I just see people being so wonderful. And the other day we were looking at this beautiful big furry bumblebee on a peony, and me and the little boys were looking at it, and we're like that far away from it, looking at it, and it was just such a beautiful, real moment of like beauty and love. Um,
what
but
came of that
yeah,
moment for you?
I don't know if the term Zen would pop in, but there's this moment where you get real perspective. We bought this farmhouse out in the country on a bunch of acres, and we have a big old garden and a very unkempt vineyard right now, and an orchard. And I try to be aware of the news globally, world news and what's going on. I think it's kind of reckless if you put your head in the sand and the head in the dirt and just ignore things that are happening. But it can also cause massive anxiety, and real issues. And and I'm diving in, do a lot of AI stuff, and that's a whole new mind of its own. And augmented reality and diving into these virtual worlds and stuff. Um, and it wears on me a little bit, I guess. So
Yeah.
it's kind
Yeah.
of neat when you jump out and my feet are instantly in the dirt, and I'm like picking strawberries off our strawberry patch, or like tending to some trees because these deer are just destroying my crops, those kind of things. And then I had this really cool moment the other day where I was sitting there. It's an old farmhouse, so I'm always like fixing something. There's a board on the deck that fell off, so I'm fixing that. And the kids were in the garden, and it was a beautiful warm day, breezes blowing, and and I looked up and they were both coming running, and they're just saying, "Dad," they had to tell me something that's really important to a 5-year-old. Um, and I remember thinking like, I could never touch a computer again, anything, and just be like so immensely complete, uh, with this. And my palette, my tools are computers and digital. Like, I am a garbage artist. Like, I can't draw. And um but I think personally, as a creative, I would give it all up in a second just to like be in that, what I consider like the real reality. And you know
Wow.
but
First of all,
sorry.
you said I'm a garbage artist, and I had a physical reaction. That's because I consider what you do art, and I think that you are madly talented. And secondly, it's wild. And actually, I feel like this is a little bit of a theme that I'm seeing and having some of these conversations is like, there are a lot of people who are deep in the technology world, even like in my industry, B2B SaaS, where I am right now. There's so many people that are deep, deep in this technology. And then they go and they live in a farmhouse, or they like
Yeah.
look for the simpler life.
Yeah. It's definitely slower, and it's so beautiful. COVID flipped the world upside down,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was one of the most beautiful things that came from some very ugly, again, showing the ugly side of humanity. Talk about, we're not going to get into that necessarily, but yeah, opening up for remote work like that, technology has given me the lifestyle um, to let me do what I do every day, both in work and at home. Um, I don't know if it's a real thing. I have plenty of friends that have work in film or media,
Yeah.
moved from LA out to little old Wisconsin, and Yeah, they can do it now. It's an option that wasn't there before. No matter how some of these office holders, the people that own the buildings, are trying to like clamp down on it.
I think
It's
that
still,
was the greatest thing that came out of COVID. The world slowed down and people realized what their priorities and values were. And I think that was actually real special for us as a whole, as a human family. So
yeah. It's like I think AI can go wonderfully. It can take art and media and things to places it's never been before easily, and it is, and it will. Or it can do very, very terrible things. Like I would say half of my followers on any various social media are bots of sorts. Some of them talk, and I've had conversations with what I knew was a bot. You can just tell. It's like, sometimes, depending on the model, I suppose. But same with like where our culture is. Maybe that's anxiety in me talking. Like, I always feel like we're on this precipice that, we can either go and do wonderful and amazing, I wouldn't say utopian things, but great things, or we can just dissolve into really hateful infighting and civil war, so to say. You know what I mean? Which is
and there's
terrible,
some
but
in between.
yeah,
And there's in between. The in between is possible. It doesn't have to be super great and horrible.
The middle path, yeah.
Middle path. Yeah. The and. Do you consider yourself an artist?
Oh, yeah. I think, surely.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can be an artist. I think it's mindset.
Do you have a project that comes to mind for you that makes you feel, that initially made you feel like an artist the most?
Yeah. There's been a couple. Pre-kids, I had a lot more time. It's just the nature of the beast. But I would just sit down on an average Tuesday night and create something. Like, if I had an idea, like a spark, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to pursue this little spark of an idea and just pop out a doodle. I had parameters in my head. I'm like, I have to do it tonight, start to finish. Those little weird rules you set up for yourself for reasons. I just cranking out all these wild things. Some were good, some were not. And I remember feeling like, wow, I've tapped into something in me, of being able to just relentlessly and freely create. And I remember that was a cool feeling. But there's been a couple really bigger events where, like, experientially, would take a new technique that I've not seen done for elements of things, put them together into, I was doing this projection. It was like a 3-story building. It was a big one. And it was interactive. People would come up, and then I would use like diffusion echoes based off their movements. And the wow that people saw, that was just, it was a really cool, I created something that is, it's very amazing, and people are digging on it, and when you can, maybe it has to do with the craft. I don't know, maybe because there's like, you put a lot of work into it and you see it come together because of know-how in various things. You conglomerate and do something new, and then you feel like you almost stepped past that imposter syndrome, that threshold into, all right, I created this. This is cool. I can rest tonight and be like, I'm digging it, Of course, the next day you go back, you're like, well, I could have done this better. Or,
Of course. That's happened to me too. Like, after I put my poetry book out, I would not open it because I immediately thought it was garbage. Like, I was like, I could have done so many things differently in that book, and like, there's typos, and like, I would have written that differently today. But you have to put out the art that is from the artist today. Like, you can't,
Yes.
Where do you get your fulfillment from? Do you get it from creating, or do you get it from the responses from people, or just like a job well done? What is it?
I think the real fulfillment I get is definitely the creation process. I'm probably much like you in that way, where a lot of times, if I make something, when it's out there, I'm done. Like, sayonara, see you later. There's a period of time when I was a web designer, because I dug it. There's some cool stuff going on at that, and it was very marketable at the time to get jobs, especially when you're thirsty for work. You'll do everything, and somebody's like, "Hey, you're a designer. Do you do websites?" I'm like, "Okay," and then before you know it, you're down that.
I guess so.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, then you do it, and then you're in the rabbit hole of doing a bunch of websites. And there's a moment where I'm like, I hate this. I respect web designers because it's an art form. But it didn't work with my mentality of my fulfillment is the creation and letting it go and then moving on. Where if you're a web designer, it's kind of always there. And it's always this breathing beast that you keep having to touch and finesse and change. And you have clients oftentimes making awful changes. And you're like, don't destroy it, but they do, which is any art form. But it never goes to bed, and I'm the kind of creator where I like to make it be like, yeah, that's cool. Learn some tricks from it that you picked up from it and set it aside and move on.
I was thinking a lot about burnout today. I have personally burned myself out multiple times. And I really was asking myself, where is this actually coming from? Because I'm not afraid of working hard, but I think what it is I'm feeling a bit misaligned in my work. I entered marketing for the love of craft, messaging, writing, content. And I think when you apply your creative skills to something that is misaligned with you, burnout is on the horizon because it's like, that's not fulfilling. I want alignment and harmony. I want it to make sense. I want my creative skills to be protected and harnessed for things that feel good. And so I've been asking myself, is there work that I can do that's not creative so I can protect and reclaim my creativity? I don't know, maybe. But have you experienced burnout yourself? And do you think that that's where it comes from, or where does it come from for you?
That was, Morgan, that was beautifully put. So the way you put that, the way you lay that out. Definitely burnout is kind of the part of the beast, especially when you commercialize your creativity.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And I think you nailed it. I've never heard it put exactly like that. The alignment of creativity, output, and energy. There's been a couple projects, even when I'm working on right now, it's revisiting old projects, recutting old animations, and they're more corporate-y, they pay my mortgage, but they're not anything I'd throw on Instagram, but sometimes, for me, when I'm on this version 12 and there's 5 revisions within each version, and
document final. This is the final version.
Yeah, totally. And then when I'm surrounded by that, and it feels like every project I'm on is like that, then I start to feel like I don't even want to look at a computer. I just want to go outside and eat apples. But
exactly. And that's the tough part too. Is if you are trying to protect that creative energy for even personal projects, you go to the personal project or the hobby and you're like, shit, I'm tapped out. I've got nothing. I've used my bank. I've used my gas on this other thing that was never aligned with me. So I think that's actually part of this whole mission of this podcast. And the name of the podcast is Art is the New Wall Street. I think for so many years, I have functioned in a way that's climb the corporate ladder, hustle as hard as possible. The dollar influences my decisions, my behaviors, and even sometimes my morality, which is just disgusting that I did that. But that's how I functioned. And so I want more of that creativity, but also more aligned creativity in a way that feels real good,
We see. Well, yeah, absolutely. I had that exact conversation. Just having a happy hour with some friends, creative, but also AI people, nerds.
That's the best.
Yeah. And we were having that exact conversation, being like, it's really easy to get caught up in I hate to use the old rat race bit, but it happens. And I've just been thinking, I recall a time when I was really thirsty for anything and just diving into everything, and everything was passionate and full of energy. And I went to every networking thing. I went to every event, and I met a lot of really great people, really amazing folk. And now granted, I live further away from everything than I used to. So everything is not like 10 minutes. It's an hour, no matter what. Everywhere I go is an hour away. So there's always that point of entry, that a barrier. But I worry, I have this internal conflict of, I love that feeling of doing more and progressing artistically, creatively, technically, learning new things. But that's a lot. It's a lot of work to always be at that boom, 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 pushing. And we were just talking about, at what point is it cool to let up the gas, and just be like, I'm content, and at what point does that idea of contentness, being content, turn into giving up, it's a battle. And I think a lot of people have it. Hats off to those lifelong extroverts that just seem to always have it going. Like, well, I don't know. And right now, I think when you start to see real routines in your career, or like patterns forming, I'm like, do you want to break that pattern, or do you want to push harder into a different and form a new pattern?
Right. Yeah, I've struggled with being a human doing instead of a human being. I have not been able to turn off the doer in me. Everyone has feminine and masculine energy within them. The kind of like structure, the doer, the Morgan that has all of her lists of shoulds instead of just like freaking existing and being and having the moment like you had when you were outside with your boys and they came up to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably, I can't say that there's not a correlation between having children and having that dilemma. You hear about it a lot, particularly for mothers, because mothers have this very unfortunate imbalance of pressures that in our culture, overall, men do not, fathers don't, and it's not fair. But it's kind of the reality of the situation.
That's another whole podcast episode.
Absolutely. But oftentimes parents will say, I don't feel like I'm giving everything to anything anymore. I'm half-assing my work. I'm half-assing my parenting. And then it really forces the thought of, especially when you have a newborn, you're sitting there. I was lucky enough to have a job where I could take 2 weeks off, and then a month off for paternity, which was a dream. So hats off to progressive companies.
Well, but, a month doesn't sound like a lot, so we need to do better.
I agree. Again, there's so many things when we're talking here that I thought, holy shit, I've been so conditioned by unhealthy scenarios.
Yep.
Now I'm regurgitating things that I don't agree with just because it's, like the garbage artist bitch.
We have to be grateful for the things, like we can be grateful and also want better.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But I think for me, one of the biggest moments of, chill out, this in the nursery with a newborn, and you can't do anything except for 100% be in the moment, and you're holding this little baby, and it's just everything of you is being dissolved into that because you can't not, you have to. And you're not being creative, you're not working, you're not making money, you're just existing as a real temporal entity with another thing that's bathing in crazy biological changes. You're all this is amazing, and it's like nothing short of real magic. It's nothing short of you hear it all the time. It's miraculous, but it forces you to cut those gotta do stuff into I'm here right now. Our little ovens are cooking each other, and this is happy.
Just
and
like
I don't think
your presence, just complete, total, utter presence.
full mindfulness kind of.
Yeah.
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 And I don't know if you recovered from that, and I don't know if you need to, I think it's just, it's a cool thing. Everybody has a different way of discovering that if they do, because I can say also, side note, 100% the parenting isn't for everybody. It's just not, and it shouldn't be. Everybody has different ways, and goals and needs and abilities, and I've met plenty of awful parents where I'm like, you should not be a parent, but that's all,
Yeah.
again, different story, different topics.
But I'm glad it came up. You have said everything is about passion and thought. If you think of something and you put your mind to it, it could transcend into reality. Can
Yeah.
you say more about that philosophy of
yeah.
yours?
That's very heady. I heard a story once when I was back in undergraduate. It was Taoism. Somebody went to a Tao master. I don't think it was Lao Tzu, but it was one of the original, the OGs, so to say. And they're like, I want to know the way. I need to be, the way is like the Tao, the way of the universe. And I want to know this craft, and I want to be an artist and all this stuff. And the teacher's like, okay, I'll teach you. We'll show you what you were looking for. And so took him under his wing, and he would go to a butcher shop every day for most of the day and just sit there and watching this guy just butcher animals. And then they'd go to the market and watch artists paint and stuff like this. And I'm sure I'm getting this story wrong, but the lesson that I pulled out of it, the student goes like, why are we always at the butcher place? And why are we always watching this butcher do this thing? And he looks at him, he's like, this butcher is closer to the way and the Tao than most of those artists out there. It's like, it's about intention and being and flowing with it. And I pondered that a lot, that whole story about, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If your intention and motivation and being is there, you can pretty much create anything. You can be an artist in anything, if it's there. And I always look at it like, maybe it's metaphysically, if there's a thought, a spirit behind what you're doing, anything you create could be a work of art. I work in advertising, marketing, and the old adage, there's marketing isn't art. There's no artists in marketing. You're marketing, you're advertising. I'm sure for a lot of it, yeah, especially when you get down to like the grind, yes, it falls away from art pretty quick. But when I know plenty of real artists that are in marketing and advertising, and they're brilliant and they're perfect and they're wonderful, just doing amazing things because their intention and heart is there, But I know plenty of people that are in it that have no anything to do with being artistic or care about it, or they're just getting the paycheck, and there's a difference, and you can tell.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, and there's some people that entered marketing that didn't enter marketing for a love of craft or consider themselves art. How would you define an artist?
I mean, that's kind of exactly what I was going to say. I think the artist, what defines an artist isn't the product or the thing they make, whether it's music or writing or butchery, it is the intention and the soul and the purpose behind it. Anybody can be an artist if they want to be an artist in what they do.
So if I were to have all the intention in the world and I walked up to a blank wall and I just put a line through it, a black line, do I get to call myself an artist because I had the intention?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? I would argue, who's to say you're not? What person has the right to come up to you, even if her critic could be like, this is garbage, but this is your opinion, this is not breaking down into the opinion, not an opinion thing, but you have to look at what justifies a person's ability to lay claim on expertise of what is art or what is not. You know,
Yeah, I think it goes back to that ego stuff we were talking about
oh
before. Do
yeah,
you think that there's room for ego in art?
you know, I had this thing when we started this that I was going to say about an intro. I generally don't like them
Yeah.
because I'm of the mindset that you should look at the art, not the artist, the music, not the musician, the philosophies, not the philosopher. Because then when you start going into the person, then you're starting to wrap ego into it somehow. No
Ah.
matter if it's just inherent. It's my opinion, it might not be correct technically, but I feel like when people start to get eyeballs focused on them for doing what they do, things change in your head. I mean, all of a sudden you start to get this, I'm pretty good, I'm pretty cool. And all of a sudden things start to shift, you know? It's tricky because when you wrap capitalism into art, things really start to get messy. And we live in a culture of idol worship, and you need to have that presence in the world that we have constructed to have an ego, because you need to have your brand. You know, you need to have this to sell your goods, you know, kind of a bullshit challenge that we built ourselves to exist in, you know?
The idol worshiping was an interesting bit, like even just considering like the Met Gala recently, it looked like the Hunger Games. Like you
Well,
have this going on in this little hub of the world, and then you have people dying,
mhm.
in
Yeah, I mean,
Palestine.
it goes with everything. I mean, look what happened. I mean, we had a reality star become president because we idol worship. And I think we can all say objectively it went badly. But joking.
The
um, yeah,
No,
but
but it's true. Everything being wrapped up in capitalism is, again, another motivator behind the whole, like starting this whole thing.
it's loose,
So I'm having the exact conversation I hoped I would, um,
right?
right here with you. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but the problem is we can think lofty and have these ideologies, but when it comes down to brass tacks, we have to exist in the world in which we are standing, you know,
mhm.
until it changes. All things aside, as you know, with our lofty goals, ambitions, philosophies, the reality of the situation is that, you know, we have to exist and prosper in the world in which we've created, no matter what, which creates challenges. And it is, I think, a source of many people's anxiety, you know,
Mhm.
the challenges
I
them.
agree. So we're coming up
Yeah.
on time, and I have
Yeah.
a couple final questions for you. The first one is, if you are somebody who is super unfamiliar with AI,
Hmm.
like bare bones, almost knows nothing, if you're interested in starting to learn about it, where would you suggest people feel the
Hmm.
waters, but the
I
temperature?
mean, social media. Just, I would say if somebody really wants to figure out the world of AI, find people that are using it on social media and see what they're using and follow your interests. You know, there's different branches of tools to do different things. You know, it can get tricky when you're trying to like do image generation with like an
Mhm.
LLM, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it can get messy. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, this sucks, you know,
Mhm.
when in fact you're just using the wrong tool. But I mean, ChatGPT is a wonderful thing if you just want to explore. Then you go their marketplace if you have access to that, and then you can dive into some crazy bonkers things. Midjourney is always just such a
Mhm.
really fun low point of entry thing. I don't even think you have to have Discord anymore. It's just a hub in there, and you don't even have to be a great prompter anymore to know to create amazing stuff on Midjourney. And if you're not going to market it or sell it, because there's a whole world of issues with that. Yeah, Stable Diffusion is super fun. There's so many online things that work with that. But I think I always say keep it simple right off the bat. You know, ChatGPT or Google Browser now, which is super fun, which is super weird. But you know, that's always going to happen. And Midjourney, Bing. I mean, all this stuff is becoming so built in now.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
And if our listeners want to connect with you or follow your story, where can they do that?
yeah, I mean, social media, basically I use Instagram a little bit as the Dave Razor, on TikTok as Dave Razor. They're pretty much mirrored. I tend to like TikTok better. I think the algorithm is just more fun, more engaging. I feel Instagram is kind of seen as day, it's a weird sway. Again, debatable. I don't know much about that necessarily. But yeah, don't really do the Facebook much anymore. Yeah. I think
Facebook. Do you have any like shows or events or any upcoming projects you're working on that you'd want to plug?
Well, I mean, I'm doing a show this Saturday. It's kid friendly, kid centric. It is Dino Days, and basically I am building this thing where kids come in a room. The third year in a row I'm doing it. It's called Dino Dance Party. Kids walk into a room, have a wall-sized projector in there going on, have a camera, and the kids see themselves, or they see little dinosaurs dancing on the wall, and I have the Jurassic Park techno version going on, and some green lasers and smoke machine. It's just like a little kid rave, but they're dinosaurs on the wall dancing.
Fun.
Yeah, they love it. They love it. I was shocked at how many kids try eating lasers when they see them, which I'm like, don't do that. But figure that out. But in a couple of weeks, I'm doing this event in Green Bay, Wisconsin. This is part of an Ignite market. It's a night market thing. They're all over the place. But we have a big wall, and there's a few of us projectionists, folks doing stuff there. But this one, I'm really going to push into generative art, using that kind of just like a perpetually morphing tripadelic scenario on this wall. Within the parameters of acceptability, I suppose. But yeah, it should be cool. It's a cool event. A lot of vendors, a lot of food, a lot of just fun people, So yeah. So
you ever do that stuff busy. At music festivals?
Not usually. I don't venture into VJ, being like a straight up VJ so much.
Okay.
But I'm not against it by any means, because I think there, especially now with it becoming so immersive, this festival, and so interactive. I always really dig when you can do the interactive elements to it, opposed to just a
totally
a passive experience.
Well, I think it's starting to go that way for sure. So
fully.
That would be cool.
It would be cool to do stuff at the Electric Forest, but I know they're really
I'm going there in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I will be there.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's some fun stuff. That, to me, that is, they make a lot of money, those things, but it's not totally sold out yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not quite. Have you been before?
Not Electric Forest, but plenty of festivals like that. Yeah. Back in the day.
There's so many different art forms coming to life, and even just being there makes me feel creative, and just the interactions with other human beings in the crowd makes me it feels like home. So it feels like to wrap this all up, it feels like the human moment for me. It feels, and maybe that's the answer.
I love it. And that's perfect.
All right, Dave. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing more about your world with us. And to all of our listeners out there, huge thanks for tuning in and hanging out with Dave and I. Keep creating, keep making magic. Your art is a gift to you and the world. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Art is the New Wall Street. If you liked what you heard today, give our show a follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find us on social media or at artistthenewwallstreet.com. Keep creating, and we'll see you next time.